player will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here. Sephiroth is coming in this week, Monday, tomorrow, as of the recording, and everyone's very excited. They have been since his announcement as part of the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children collaboration. And so today's character review is the pretty standard items. I've got a couple additions here, though. The character overview, we'll go through the total stat analysis, the report card where I grade some of those attributes in the context of his kit. We'll look at a new player snapshot, some of my thoughts as a newer player, how he fits into your team building capabilities, some general thoughts. We'll go through the job, the TMR, the job-based vision cards, some general optimization where we talk about some general equips that I give a thumbs up on. I'm actually going to list some favorite teams of mine for him too. This is a new addition to the character reviews. Those teams will change over time, but as a jumping off point for some newer, I think it's good to get some visibility to them. We'll look at some sample builds to just gauge at the final stats and whatnot, and then some Truststone optimization. And so kicking things off, the brand new fire unit added here to Global, the unique main job, roughly called Return of the Hero, Soldier and Axe Knight as the sub-jobs as well. He equips katanas and cloths, hats, and accessories as a Move 3, Jump 1 unit as a new 100 cost unit. Now the face stat recommendations, I have 50 listed here. I'm going to throw you a curveball though. You can go as high as 97. Me personally, I will be going as high as 97. We're going to talk about the upsides as to why, but I like that higher faith on him. On the main job, he's got a max range of 5 squares away. The limit break is 6 squares away, though, so slightly longer than the main job abilities. He's got 2 AoE scaling and 2 unit scaling abilities. From a resistance perspective, his strongest is the 25% to slash, next at 15% to strike, the 5% to missile and magic. That magic one, don't be surprised when he gets beaten up by some magic units. I'll talk about that in a second, but minus 10% to pierce as well. The thing with the magic is just that we've seen a higher skew of magic resistance over time, and Sephiroth's a little bit lower in that regard. It's not a concern right now, but in the future, you'd be surprised. The ailment resistances, 50% to paralyze and slow, I like a lot. The 10% to frostbite, certainly handy with some of the new frostbite units coming out. The mastery ability, he's got acquired AP of 30% and unit res of 15. He's also got 15 healing power and 15 debuff weakening on his 140 ability, so highly recommend you get him to that level. Now, for the stat overview, HP is right in line with many of the other 4th anniversary units here, 4235, way above the 75th percentile of all these units. The base attack, the same thing here. He's coming in at 416, virtually the highest in the game. Very strong attack stat with what the new units also have come out with. The base agility, also above average, and that matters because he does have an agility passive too that he'll get to very fast levels because of this. The base dexterity, also above average. It's not off the charts, but 75th percentile, definitely above where many units end up. This is a promising start for him. And the base luck, he's right on the line here of my 2 little bars at 190. So the base luck is good. It's not stellar, but certainly also in line with the 4th anniversary units. So all things considered, base stats, I'm pretty happy with where he ends up. I don't think there's any weaknesses here. These are pretty much in line with where many of the newer units come in at. The total stats, when you include the board nodes, the mastery ability, he does actually get a little bit of extra HP on his board node, which not all units do. Sometimes it's the primary attack stat, sometimes it's the HP. He gets the extra bulk in that regard. They give him 11 agility points to get him to a very good starting agility level, and a fair amount of luck here to actually even amp up his luck. Same with dexterity. The total stats, I'm very happy with where he ends up. Now for the agility, this is one of his strongest points here. Agility with no passives, he's at around 84, still very competitive, and he's got an agility passive that will get him to virtually top 5 fastest characters in the game, give or take like half an agility point. He's right there with the fastest units you could possibly get to. You have an option whether you want that passive on or off. Not all characters get that ability to not use their agility passive. He's one of them because of how innately fast he can be already. And then from the crit hit and crit avoidance perspective, the crit rate, although he's got a good base dexterity stat, this is still in line with most units, nothing crazy. The critical avoidance rate, a little bit higher than average, but only a few percentage points. Both these are in good spots. It's really nothing crazy here. The accuracy, he starts off very innately accurate, but he's got no accuracy passives whatsoever, so when you compare him to what most units can achieve, he does fall back down to earth a little bit. It's still very much way above average accuracy, but it's going to need some support if you want to be able to consistently hit certain evade units. He does have a very good guaranteed hit though, but it's very short range in his kit, so it's not necessarily a weakness of his, but it's something you do have to gear for potentially. We'll talk more about that soon. And the evasion, right in line with the other 4th anniversary units, technically considered an evade unit if you were to min-max it, but versus the newer units, he's not going to be dodging much, if anything. And so very good luck from this perspective versus the older units. And so the report card now. Effective HP, I'm going with an A. No defense, no spirit innately, no AoE res, but he starts off with the 15 unit res. He technically gets 15 AoE wide resistance on physical attacks with his weapon equipped. That's not really included in this grade, but it's hard to ignore. He's really just being buoyed by the fact that he's got some great innate HP stats and really small weaknesses. It's really just the Pierce weakness at the minus 10%. The survivability, though, is an A. Very much could be an A+, really and truly. He's got a 4-time, 50% general barrier, 15 healing power, 15 debuff weakening. On his buff, 25 AoE res, re-raise, 20% all element res. On his second buff, he's got more debuff weakening, 50% crit evade as well, and he's got a massive 50% heal absorption. Heal back may be the wrong term, but 50% absorption on that main diamond ability, and his low AP ability also absorbs damage, which all in conjunction with the extra healing power he gets really adds to his self-sustain as the battle continues on. Now, damage is definitely an A. He's got amazing penetrations. There's some attack stat variability depending on the passives you use, on how high he gets and where he might normally stay at. He can dispel many of the AoE mitigations, though. No problem with that, but there is no physical barrier break innately in his kit, so that is one way to potentially, counterplay some of his damage. But he's got an AoE crush and an all-element imperil, too. He is not going to be hurting for damage at the end of the day. Now, the agility is definitely an A. With that passive, he is with the fastest units in the game. Without it, still in that B to B plus tier. Overall, I think it's a safe A, though. The Heaven's Cloud Katana, that is the reliquary weapon, also gives agility. So if you were to not equip his own weapon and use the Heaven's Cloud, you have some alternate ways to get a lot of agility on him there, too. Now, accuracy, I'm going with a B. He does have the guaranteed hit on the main job. The accuracy, way above average, but not amazing. You will need support in the future units that come out that are evade units. We don't really have any at the moment because of the power creep, but something to keep in mind. The evasion for him is a B, right in line with Cloud and Joom for potential evasion, so use them as their as that stat stick if you want for what you are used to seeing. The movement is a B. Jump +1 is very helpful to toggle on and off depending upon what map you're playing in. The auto ease of use for me is an A. The penetrations, the buff rotation, the perils, all very straightforward. You can really put him in and plug and play, and he's going to do his job relatively efficiency. The game disruption is also definitely an A here. Not only an overall great unit, but that curse status effect on the limit break, which we'll talk about soon, is a potential game changer being added into the game. The passives, I think, are an A. Astounding main passive. The rest are really good also. I really can't decide which one I like best. The counter ability is an A. He's got physical reflex, which still can be clutch. It's not as high of a percentage chance, but you still can win a lot of games by reflexing, just getting the luck of the draw there. He does have a second counter on his second buff that is a preemptive hit, which also can be nice for, maybe that's the difference in killing an enemy before they can hit you. We've seen that come in clutch many times before. The overall job and kit, I also think, is an A. Amazing utility. He's got dispels on hit, imperils and crushes, everything you want to see from a unit for a final grade of an A+. Now, I do see some future counterplay to him. That's why I'm not going with the S at this time. But this is a very meta unit that does a lot of really good things very well. I think he's the best unit of this collaboration. Cloud is just ever so slightly behind. Innately speaking, that triple greatsword team is top tier. Sephiroth is going to be competitive with it, but he's not going to overtake it in its purest form. But absolutely will go head to head very competitively. But for the new player thoughts, my pull verdict is actually a thumbs up. Now, here's the thing. The fire units permanent pool are slightly power crap. But for a new account, I do still think in the permanent pool, they are among some of the best characters you can pull to get off the ground and really just kind of form a base of your team. The vision cards, they're average, but still decent return on investment. The best fire vision cards were limited, so the ones that are remaining are fine, but I still think you are very workable. The katana perspective for Sephiroth, there's no katana units I recommend in the permanent pool. And the vision card support is actually pretty good, but no, I don't know if it's really a good investment for a beginner to specifically chase these cards and maybe use your select vision card pulls on them and whatnot. But from a fire perspective, you have some good tanks. Shells is definitely still a very serviceable support. The vision cards are workable. I think Sephiroth is a good enough unit that with some of the permanent pool things here from the fire perspective, I think you can get a good account off the ground running relative to the other elements at the very least. And so the general thoughts, Great penetration uptime. He's got 40 slash pen, defense pen, and AoE resistance penetration on one passive. It's absolutely exceptional. 40 defense pen extra on his diamond AoE. He's got 20 slash res pen on the weapon. There's also great vision card support for slash res pen, so he's got a couple different ways to get to very high levels. A great amount of utility for the team too. He can dispel enemy buffs on hit, kind of like New Lucio can. He's got courage remove on his diamond. He's got re-raise prevention as part of the curse on the limit break. He can remove AoE wide buffs to enemies on that diamond, so you can't use your AoE wide buffs against him. He's also got the 60% AoE crush on the 120, which is very, very powerful. He's got good self-sustain with that 15 healing power. He's got the 50% damage absorb on the diamond. He's got a 40% restore HP on his subjob too, which we'll talk about soon. His low AP abilities also an absorb HP on a 121% damage mod. He's a mainstay unit for Fire and Katana for teams to build around as far as I'm concerned. I absolutely think he's a cornerstone unit for both of those teams. Debatable faith level, I do like 97 for Curse though. The thing for me is that, sure, maybe he can take some more damage or more status effects from those magic-oriented units. That's what Truststones are for, to kind of help mitigate some of that. But Curse is such a game changer. You want it to be landing a majority of the time, if possible. That to me makes this a 97 for me. But he's not without holes for counterplay, and right now you're not going to realize it, but as the game goes on, I can see how they're kind of setting things up. His final effective HP is fair. It's competitive, but it's not off the charts amazing. He's reliant on that 4-hit barrier on his passive right now to really prop him up for taking a couple hits. The debuff weakening is also a major form of survivability where he can get to very high levels to reduce how much you can imperil him by, how much you can do the healing power down on him by. The Dispel also changes much of his character kit, and future evade units are likely to evade him. That, yeah, he's got a guaranteed hit, but should a top-tier 4th anniversary evade unit come in and they have the Nullify Sure hit, he's actually going to struggle a little bit against that, and his Limit Break is baitable at range 6, being 1 square longer than his main job range. He's also susceptible to Curse himself as well, that all of that, damage absorption is gone should he get into a mirror matchup with Sephiroth. So it's not without its holes, but he's still absolutely A+. The passives are awesome for the attack stat and the damage uptime, though. Just an honorable mention, because I did not use this in my sample builds. That 60% attack passive is an extra 277 attack stat for him. 277 attack is immense. So just highlighting that for the passives. Now, he does rely also on AP restore in his kit, but he's got enough decreased AP consumption from the weapon and the acquired AP from his mastery ability, in addition to what else he can get, that I think it's very manageable, even without that AP restore that he has, which we've seen the Wind Veritas TMR obviously demolish all of that AP restore as of late. Now, for the passive abilities, Heroic Charisma is the absolute guarantee. You must have this top one on at all times. The Jet Black Wing, they're really debatable if you want that agility or the jump. I do think these attack-oriented passives are also very serviceable, particularly Axe Knight's Knowledge, where you can get another 25% decreased AP consumption. I think this one's very competitive. And if you wanted to go more for a bulkier Sephiroth, I don't hate Chivalry of Patience either. 12% HP, the extra elemental chain res, which you can get elsewhere too. I think all 5 of these are great. Pick and choose. Now, the counter abilities, he's got that physical reflex. I think it's really the only one that I love here. The other ones are average to fair. The main job buffs, his teammate buff is exceptional. It's the AoE res. He grants the effect to allies to dispel haste on their hits. I didn't mention in the general thoughts, but yeah, absolutely a ton of haste counterplay here. He also dispels buffs on his own hits. He's got that AP restore. He's got the re-raise, the all element res. On the second buff, it's all those extra effects we talked about, the survivability with that preemptive counter ability too. I love both of these. The main job offensive, this is really good from the perspective that he's got a diamond, he's got the square, he's got 2 different single target abilities, 2 different forms of damage absorption here. He's got a 60% slash crush, which I didn't even mention yet. It is a triple hit, so there is a significant amount of damage to be done there. The 100% hit chance. The AP cost of these, not awful. That diamond at 32 is probably the most expensive you'll really see in practice, but it's technically cheaper because of his weapon. I like everything on this main job for what it does for damage between the different kinds of crushes and the AoE wide dispel. And then one very important thing here about the healing power, I'm not going to go through all of this. You can pause and read it at your leisure, but as you add healing power here, and I'm just going to use the min-maxing effects of it, the way this absorb HP effect works is that whatever damage you do, he will absorb at minimum 30% more than that because of his innate dream. Should you add this Truststone passive and a defense or spirit set bonus to give him another 20, get him a total of 35, you'll absorb 70% more. So the example is if you do 1,000 damage on this ability and you have all that healing power, the 35 healing power, you will absorb up to 1,700 healing back off the 1,000 damage. And then for the 50% damage absorption done, should you add up all those forms of healing power, if you get him up to the 35 again, he's not just absorbing 50% of the damage, he's absorbing 85% of the damage. So you have a lot of things to play with here with the healing power because of what he has innately that you can get to some very high levels because of this. Now for the limit break, this is that 20% all element and peril. It's also curse, which prevents all healing for 3 turns. There's going to be questions around this. It's literally all healing. Heal back, damage absorption, support healing you from afar, self-heal, whatever the case may be. You will literally gain 0 health for 3 turns. Might be 4 turns. I need to double check that. And then re-raise does not activate upon proccing. So it's basically a form of uncounterable re-raise removal. That it's not under the category of re-raise seal. You can seal re-raise on him. It's not going to matter because curse acts independently from that. Now for the sub-jobs, this is personally my favorite, and this is part of that 97 Faith debate. I like the fact that he's got a small chance to berserk enemies on this cross-shaped AoE, and this restore HP I think is very good for second Guild War fights where restoring 40% of your HP. Again, if you're up to that 35 healing power, he'll actually absorb 68% of his total HP. That's absolutely fantastic for second Guild War fights, or even mid-fight. If an enemy's not in range and he's low health and his AI decides to use this, absolutely awesome. The soldier one's fine. You got the guaranteed hit chance on here, but I think it's just, inferior in many ways to the main job one. I don't love what the rest of this job has to offer either. I don't think any of it is a significant advantage to his main job. The Axe Knight, kind of the same idea. The heal back here is redundant with that first sub job, so I don't think that has a ton of value. I don't love this teammate buff as it is. I would never want him to prioritize this by accident over the other teammate buff. And the abilities here are fine, but I think they're, again, subpar to what the other main job and sub job has. So the Axe Knight is probably my second favorite, but this Return of the Hero one is absolutely my favorite. Now for the TMR review, if you're a new player and you do not have a haste TMR yet, get this. Amazing TMR. I've heard a lot of people hype this one up. For a veteran player, I don't think this is that amazing. The 4 turns of haste is noticeable compared to the normal 3 turns of haste, but with as much haste to spell as there is, this could easily be a wasted buff. The same thing with the accuracy, that it can be easily dispellable. You can see why Sephiroth as a B tier accuracy unit, this actually is a good TMR for himself, potentially to get that accuracy buff. I don't really think it's necessary right now, though. I don't think it's a significant advantage over the other haste TMRs. The stats on it are okay. I don't love any of these in particular. For an accessory, they're actually pretty high, but I don't think it's worth just equipping the TMR for a stat stick. I don't think that's good enough either. So this one's not bad. But it's not amazing. I think people are overhyping it a little bit. Now for the drop-based vision cards, the best synergies at this time are the Spear, the Staff Black Mage, and the Mace. Now Mace and Staff Black Mage have kind of subsided, but Sword Red Mage and Staff Devout have seen big upticks as of late, and they will continue to see synergies between the two classes that I think Katana is one of the best not only rainbow teams, but multi-element categories you could work into something, because you do have a balance of spear teams, other slash-oriented units, and magic-oriented units. It's nice to have that versatility. I give Katana 2 thumbs up on what they have for job-based vision card eligibility. And now for the unique equipment, again, his weapon, I'm partial to the aim build personally. I mean, I don't think the loss of attack is enormous, but I think any of these 3 are certainly serviceable. I would probably say Assault or Aim are your safest bets, but that's the decreased AP consumption to reduce the physical damage, the wider the AoE, and 20 slash res pen. And I do think the cell phone item coming in the Trials of Reckoning next week is probably blessed in slot form. That's the 30% acquired AP, 10 unit res, the 30 chain res, and 10% permanent physical damage up. I love all of those things on this item. And for the general optimization, I think his weapon is the best. But I think the Heaven's Cloud is competitive. It's really just dependent upon your agility tuning, in my opinion. The other equips, pretty standard stuff here. You really don't have a ton of options at this time in the game. The Alex Ring, the Survival Vest, the Genji Glove. I think the cell phone's better than the Genji Glove, personally, in what they have for overlap. The pod accessories are still good. I just don't know if they're my favorites. The Espers, again, nothing crazy here. Pretty standard DPS Espers. I wouldn't get too fancy with them. And the TMRs, I really don't think he's a TMR-oriented unit. I think he's a 2-buff unit. and I wouldn't play around with the TMRs unless you really need to, but nothing strong for recommendations. And some of my favorite teams for him so far, I'm not going to go deep into these, but the Joom Cloud Sephiroth team is kind of just like, hey, here's some power creep, deal with it. It's a very slash heavy team that's full octane damage. You just basically win on numbers, but very competitive team for right now. The Mono Fire team, I've seen it against a lot of these ice heavy teams. I certainly don't think it's the worst one. It's balanced between its physical and magic, but I don't think that's a top meta team by any means. I think the Summer Glaciella team with Kadaj as a water-oriented team does have some good overlap with the Katana and the Sword Red Mage, as we talked about. Glassy absolutely amplifies both of these guys' survivability by a fair amount. I love that combo. You also have your Mono Katana team, but that's obviously more anti-magic with Dario in the mix. It's not a bad team, just, not as useful current days, but certainly still a high quality team. I do think an amazing team is when Gilgamesh comes out in the future, that the Sword Red Mage and Katana overlap. This is the kind of team that you're really going to rely on the water, the ice, and the Sword Red Mage and let Summer Glassy and Gilgamesh do the heavy lifting. Sephiroth is really just there to just mess up everyone else in their wake, but that's a very competitive team. And then I do think kind of the more classic staff Black Mage team where you have an Aldoa and a Helena. Not an amazing team that's going to compete with a lot of things, but it's still a high-quality team in my opinion. I think Sephiroth still adds a lot of things to that staff Black Mage wrinkle. So these are some of my favorites. They're not going to be the best, but if you're looking to play with a couple teams, I think this is a decent enough jumping off point. Now for some sample builds, the Mono Katana is the one I'm starting off with. This is virtually the same team I used last time for Kadaj. One small thing here, unfortunately, I have acquired a P20 listed here on the agility set. That's not recommended. Take that out. We'll talk about that soon on the next slide, or the 2 slides from now. But one of the things that popped off to me here in this build, his HP is not even at 10,000, and the effective HP is a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing. And the attack stat, now I'm using the agility passive here, not the attack 60% passive. So the attack stat's at 1514. The agility is absolutely bonkers, but stat-wise, I'm not really blown away by this Sephiroth, which is why you're really relying on like that all-element res on the buff, the debuff weakening on there. That 4-hit barrier is absolutely a game changer for the effective HP here, as well as we can do to absorb damage, because he's going to do a lot of damage, so that it will be a significant amount of healing. So don't be fooled by some of the stats here looking a little bit lower. In practice, it's still going to have high impact because of all the other things going on. And when we do the Mono Fire team here, the vision card play, not ideal. It's not awful, but I think it's kind of janky. I've seen this team being used in JP. I don't love it personally, but I think if you're making a Mono Fire team, this is one of the better iterations you can obviously put together. The stats here, the HP is definitely better because of the HP from the Sorrow vision card, as well as the mastery of having 3 fire units together. The attack is roughly similar. The agility is still very strong. The effective HP is a little bit higher because of his overall HP stat being higher too. His defense pen is off the charts here because of that Sorrow vision card that gives him another 20. So he'll be at 70 at base and will actually hit 110 with his diamond, which might sound overkill, but if you're playing against someone like a Summer Glassy who can reduce defense pen, that's actually still very valuable. But overall, I'm pretty comfortable with much of what I'm seeing here. And now for the Truststones, defense and spirit are my favorite on the left side, just to get the extra healing power. If you're at 97 faith, I would probably load up on statuses rather than element res personally, just to make sure you're not hit by a stop or a confusion, something to throw you off. Even the curse you're going to want for that Sephiroth mirror matchup. The right side, I think agility aim perfectly good. The one thing I made a mistake here on, the acquired AP of 20 overlaps with the cell phone, so you would not want this on. I think I would probably swap out the dexterity and the acquired AP for fire attack 10 and crit rate 10 personally. Again, this is all equipment oriented. I'm also assuming you're using his weapon here, so you don't need the slash res pen. But should you have the Heaven's Cloud Katana on, you definitely want the slash res pen. So I think playing with some combination of these is fine, but I think these top 4 are pretty safe in terms of the attack, the defense pen, the healing power, and the reaction block rate. Well, that's the Sephiroth review altogether. This is a very, very good unit. Maybe a little bit different than what you're used to seeing in terms of some of the stats and having all the extra effects to think about with him, but they're very good in practice. That's the bottom line. You'll have no problem using him. He's absolutely a top-tier unit and likely will be for quite some time, even with Joom around in the meta. That's where Curse comes in so predominantly, that if you can bring her healing to 0, even Sephiroth is going to be very competitive with her as a fire unit. So there's lots to like here. I'm very excited to build him and put him into different teams. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to y'all later.